there, my name is Kelly Dale with Off the Beaded Path, and today you'll see things are a little bit different. I'm joined with my friend Heather.
Hi.
From Beach Beads in Surfside, South Carolina. A few weeks ago, I was here at Heather's store, and she has made some beautiful new shell beads that I just fell in love with. So I said, hey Heather, let's do a collaboration. So in today's video, what I'm going to be showing you is a beaded rope, and Heather's actually going to be showing you how to take one of her beautiful shell beads and then make it into a pendant for this beaded rope. So Heather, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell them what they're going to need today.
Hi, I'm Heather from Beach Beads near Myrtle Beach in Surfside, and today you are going to need a small link chain. You're only going to need about 6 to 7 links, but I like to leave it a little longer so it gives you something to hang on to. You're going to need some 20 gauge head pins and some 18 gauge wire for your base.
Yep, and we're also going to need just a variety of beads.
Yes,
right?
just a variety of coordinating beads that go with your shell and your design.
Yeah, and so Heather is actually going to sell these. She sells them through her Facebook page, so Samuel actually linked that right here below us. So I really recommend that you get a shell and then you decide your colors for your rope, because even she and I put together the colors for the rope that I made for the video today, and even once we kind of got it going, you know, we ended up changing the shell just because the colors look so different. So when you get one of these shells, they're beautiful, but you may have to play with the colors of your necklace if you're going to do the twisted herringbone like I'm going to show you today, just because each of those colors are going to completely change things. So we're going to go ahead. Heather's going to get started, and she's actually going to show you how to make the pendant.
Okay, we're going to start with a long piece of chain. We will not use all this chain, but it's so much easier to keep a hold of as we're doing it. So this is going to be our finished product of what we're doing, and this is the one that I'm working on for Kelly, and I'm going to show you one from scratch. So this will be here. So the first thing you're going to do is take your chain and you're going to get your largest focal. You always want to put your largest one at the bottom. It weights the cluster and it just adds a little bit of pop. So I don't really wrap the politically correct way. I actually wrap an easy way. After 10 years of teaching, I've kind of figured out an easy way to wrap. So what you're going to do is you are going to grab about 1/8 of an inch from the top of the bead, and you are going to bring your wire all the way around until it's horizontal. Just like that. You want it totally horizontal. You do so because if not, you're going to get a teardrop and not get a loop. So then what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and add that to the bottom link of the chain right there. And just pop it in there. And then what you're going to do is you're going to hold your loop that you made with your round nose. It's better to get in the tool to get a good hold. If not, you'll find yourself struggling because the narrower you get, the less hold you have actually. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab at the end and you're going to pull and wrap until you touch that bead. Sometimes you have to kind of move the bead out of the way, and you want to just get it wrapped until you touch. Now this is when you would adjust if needed. Sometimes your loop will, I say, it's kind of looks like it's in the wind. My loop is straight, so I don't need to adjust this one. So the best cut to trim this is a trick that I've learned is you turn it upside down to get a good cut. Then you can get right in there and get that tail cut off. And always hold your scraps so they don't fly. And then what you're going to do is just take your bent nose and come in, and you're going to just squeeze that tail in and tuck it in there, because if you do not tuck your tails, they catch on everything. So you'll just get a really nice good tuck on there, and then your loop is totally centered. So that is going to be your first charm. Now we're going to skip up and go to the next charm, which is not as big, but we're going to go up one link. So the bottom one hangs from the bottom length, and then we're going to go up one link and add this. So again, I'm going to grab about 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to bring this wire all the way around till it comes horizontal. Just like that, actually even more, just like that. Then you're going to come off the tool and just pop it in that next loop. So we're going one loop up. I do find that if you make your charms too long, that they look stemmy, I guess you would say, like stems. They kind of cover each other up and hang too long. So you don't want to use more than 2 beads or a bead and a bead cap on your cluster, just because they don't hang correctly. The best way to hang them is in a cluster, so they kind of all, you can see them all and they all coordinate. If you go too long with your little dangles, they just do not hang correctly. So stay short with a bead, maybe a bead and a bead cap, just depending on the size of your bead. Okay, so we have the first 2 there, and now we're going to go on the same link with this one. So the bottom one is the only one that gets its own link. Every other time you are going to use the same link and put a bead on each side. And do not worry if they are not hanging right when you first put them on there, because they will once they all fall and have that bottom link as the anchor. So I'm just going to pop that in the same link that I just did the second one. And again, hold your loop flat. And you always want to take, your instinct is to go in here and pull, but you actually want to go to the end. That is where you're going to get the best tension, because we all know that the key to good wraps are pulling with tension. So you want to just pull until you touch that bead. This bead's a little different because the hole is a little diagonal on the starfish, but you can still get a good wrap. Turn it upside down. And if for any reason you don't like the way your cluster, or you don't like, the 2 colors beside each other, the great thing about this is you just nip and, lay it back out. Like if it's not laying right, you can always you're just losing a head pin, and we know that we go through those like crazy. So you're just gonna put your next one on your head pin. And since I have pink on this side, I'm going to go ahead and put the pink on that side. You don't want to put a lot of the same color on the same side, because then your eye pulls towards that color. So you just want to kind of coordinate to where you don't have all the same color on one side. Okay, and then you're just going to again hold the loop flat and pull at the end. And pull and wrap, pull and wrap. Now, if you do, this loop is fine, but let's say it's in the wind, as I say, leaning to the left or the right. You want to go in snug. That is how you are going to adjust your loop. But you always want to make sure that you leave your tail, because sometimes when we adjust our loop left or right, it leaves a little bit more room to wrap. So if your loop does need adjusted straight, just gently move it back and forth to where it is straight above the bead. And then if you have more room to wrap, go ahead and do that then, and then trim. Because if you trim before you adjust your loop, a lot of times it leaves a little gap. And this is a great project for beginning wire wrappers, because these fall in such a cluster that you really can't tell if your wraps are perfect or not. So it doesn't, and that will fall to that side. So it doesn't really matter that your wraps are perfect. It's a great way to get practice too. So now you'll notice that I'm narrowing my beads as I go up. That's typical of a cluster, because your larger ones fall to the bottom and then you get smaller as you go up. And then you're just going to continue wrapping. And again, I'm on the same link, so I usually do 2 beads per link. And with my clusters, I usually do anywhere from 7 to 11 beads, just depending on the focal and how much bling I want. So it's totally up to you. And but it is a great trick when you turn your beads upside down to trim. You get such a close trim because the bead's not in the way. And then I'm just going to tuck that little guy right there. And you can always add. That's another thing, is you can always add beads. Like if you don't feel like your cluster is full enough, or you think, oh, I didn't get that color in there, you can put 3 wrapped beads on one link. There is no law against that. You just get your cluster to where you like it. But like I said, you just don't want to go too long. That's the only mistake that I see with people, is they tend to go too long and they just don't hang correctly. So the smaller the better. You're just going to trim that. And the reason you want to keep all your scraps is because it will kill your vacuum. Vacuums do not like wire. That one doesn't need tucked. Every once in a while you'll luck out and get a perfect wrap and you won't need to tuck it. So here we go with this one. I'm just going to put, now this is a small enough bead where I can put 2 beads on there to put on the cluster because it's not too long, but you don't ever want to go longer than 2 beads or a bead and a bead cap, especially when you're getting towards the top, because you want the beads to be shorter at the top. And that's why it's so important to be able to grab onto your chain, because if you don't have enough chain to hold on to, you're just fumbling because the links are so small. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and wrap the shell. I use, like I said before, I use 18 gauge wire to wrap the shell. It's just a good sturdy wire, and it just is good for the weight. Okay, so that will be the cluster when I trim the chain. So that's what it'll look like. Okay, so I'm just going to take some 18 gauge wire. I just kind of use enough just to kind of eyeball it because all the shells are different. So that's probably about 4 inches. And I'm going to nip it here. The great way, you want to make sure that both ends are flush cut, just because it's a nice flush end when we're making our loops. And what you're going to do is you're basically making our own eye pin. So you're going to come in here and grab flush. You don't want any wire sticking up. You want it totally flush. And you're just going to bring it around till you get a circle. Okay, so now you see the circle there, but it is not centered. So the trick to getting it centered is you go right where it ends and you just kick it back. So now it is centered over your wire base. And then what I'm going to do is just slide that on, and you'll see that that almost goes up in the shell, and that's great because you don't really want that to be the focus. Now again, sometimes you can put a bead on top of here, totally up to you. If you want to put a bead on the top, you can for extra decoration. This bead is pretty long, so I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to wrap this just like I did my charms. I'm going to come about 1/8 of an inch. Now I am going to come towards the back of the tool so I have a larger loop, because then you can put it on anything. If you want a small loop, you can just come towards the front of the tool, but I'm going to come towards the back, and I am going to do the same thing I did before. I am going to bring it all the way around until you have a loop. Just like that. You want this horizontal. You want it almost touching the bottom of the tool. Now, since I don't have to add this to anything, I'm going to keep it on the tool right where it is. That will ensure I have that same loop. And again, I'm going to grab the end of the wire and I'm going to pull and wrap. Pull and wrap until I touch the glass shell. Okay, so now if I need to adjust my loop, which I do, it's a little bit leaning to the left, I'm going to go in snug and I'm going to adjust it. Now what that did is that opened up a little bit more room for me to wrap. So I'm going to pull on the end again, come back a little bit and pull and fill that gap. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to turn it upside down and I'm going to trim that wire and hold on to your end. And then I'm going to tuck. Okay, and then what you're going to do is we're going to add that cluster to it. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the link. Get rid of that extra scrap right there. So now I don't hardly have anything to hold on to, but I'm going to open this up a little bit. So I'm just going to open my loop a little bit and find the top of my cluster. And I'm going to add it on just like that. Now, this is key. You have to go in snug. You cannot go in with the tip of your tool, and you want to turn it around till it touches. And then, voila. So then you have your clusters And you can always, like I said, if they're not laying right, you can go back and cut and get them to lay right, but you just have a little cluster right there, you have your loop right there, and you are all set. And here is another finished one. And then this is the one that I'm working on for Kelly's shell. And you can see I have a couple more wraps to go. Now, if you feel like you need more wire, you can use longer head pins. 2 inches are typically good for the size. Sometimes, like for the larger ones, I'll use a 3-inch, because the more wire you have, the better wrap you get. Because if your wire is too short when you're wrapping, not only is it frustrating, but it's very hard to get a good wrap because you have nothing to hold on to. So don't ever try to wrap with a short head pin, because you will not get the result you want. So there you go.
So for my part of the collaboration, I'm going to be teaching you how to make the tightly twisted necklace. Now this necklace pattern can actually be found in my book, which is the step-by-step herringbone stitch. This pattern is on page 40. So if you have the book, you already have this pattern, and it's a wonderful pattern. To start out, you're going to need 3 colors of a size 11 seed bead. And you're going to need about 16 grams of each of those colors. You're also going to need about 15 yards of thread. You can use Fireline, you can use 1G, you can use KO thread, kind of whatever you want. I really like to use 1G for this project because it makes the necklace very soft and lays really well. Because I found if I use Fireline for it, I stitch so tight, I come up with just a really tight hot mess. And so you don't want that. You want it to lay nice and rounded. So that's why I'm going to use actually KO thread today. I'm using this like golden color for my actual necklace for Heather's pendant. Now to actually teach you with today, I'm going to be using size 8 seed beads. I tried the video with 11s, and although you could see my color difference really well, you couldn't really see the beads as great. So I'm going to use size 8s. I'm going to use 3 colors, and they're just random colors. I will tell you before the end of the video what colors I actually used for my sample piece that will go with Heather's pendant that she's going to be showing you how to make the actual pendant part. So this is the necklace. This is actually the one from my book. When you start this project, what's going to happen, you're going to want to pull your thread really tight in the very beginning, because you're going to start out with straight stacks of beads, and what's going to happen is after a few stitches, those stacks are going to start to go in a direction. So depending on if you're left-handed or right-handed will depend on the direction that your spiral is going to go through, and that's fine. It doesn't matter what direction your spiral is, so just be aware of that. You want to start off with as much thread as you are used to handling. For me, I'm going to start out with about 3 yards, but know that about 3 yards is only going to do about 4 to 5 inches. It's not going to do much at all. So the total piece is going to take about 15 yards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start you off with your size 8 seed beads. Then I'm actually going to take my strip that I have started, and I'm going to show you how to start and end thread using the size 11, so that way you can see actually how to do that. So go ahead and get 3 colors of a size 11 seed bead together, and we'll get started. One other note that's really important is it's best if you can use the same brands of seed beads. So 3 Mayukis, 3 Tohos, 3 check beads, whatever. If you mix them, it will be okay, but what will happen is you will see one seed bead a little bit raised more than the other. So just be aware of that as you're making your spiral. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so since I'm going to be using a bigger bead, I'm going to be using a 10-pound Fireline. I want to use something a little bit thicker to hold it together better. So to start out, we're going to start with a ladder stitch. I'm going to start out with 6 A's. So 3, 4, 5, and 6. We want to let these beads drop down. And I like to leave enough tail that I can go back and add my, my clasp. I leave about 12 inches. And what we want to do is from the tail up, we're going to go back through the first 3 beads that we added. So here's my first 3, here's the second 3 for my total of 6. And I'm going to bring these down. And when I do, you can see here what happens is it bring these together. So at this point, let me see if I can zoom this in here a little bit so you can see. There we go. Okay. So my thread is coming out of the top of my stack here. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to come down through the second part of my stack. And when you pull, make sure you pull your thread straight down. So now I'm going to move on to my bee color. So this time I'm only going to pick up 3. My thread is coming out of the bottom of this second stack. So I'm going to come right back down through that same stack so that it makes a circle. And now I'm going to come up through the stack that I just added. Okay, I need 2 stacks of each color, so I'm going to pick up 3 more bee. I'm going to come, my thread is coming out of the top of that stack, so I'm going to come right up through the same stack so that it makes my circle. And then I'm going to come down through the stack that I just added. So if you've already taken a gander and a guess, you'll know that my next stack is going to be my C's. So I'm going to pick up 3 C's. My thread is coming out of the bottom of my stack, so I'm going to come right back down through that same stack so that it makes a circle. Now I'm going to come up through my new stack, and then I have to do 1 more stack of C's. So I'm going to pick up 3. My thread is coming out of the top of that stack, so I'm just going to come back up through that same stack. And then I'm going to come down through my new stack. So when you finish, you will have a stack of 6 columns, 2 stacks of each color. So now we have to make those into a circle. So my thread is coming out of the bottom of my last stack. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to come up through this first stack where my tail is. And as you do that, it's going to form into a circle. So right now my thread is coming out of the first stack. So I'm going to come, and it's coming out of the top, so I'm going to come down through my last stack, which is those C's. And if it pulls apart like mine just did, that's fine. Just pull everything back together. Okay, so my thread is coming out of the bottom of my C stack. So to start my get ready, I'm going to come up through that first stack 1 more time. And so now it's formed into a semi-circle hot mess. So you can use your awl or whatever to kind of poke this out as you work and get started. You can see 2 A's, 2 B's, and 2 C's. So we have a mantra that we're going to be doing. The color stack you're coming out of is the color bead you'll actually pick up. So we're going to pick up 2 A's. My mantra is down 3. So I'm going to go all the way down through the first stack or the second stack of A's. And then up 1. So I'm going to come all the way up through this top B. Now, the reason you pull tight is because we want this to start pulling and shaping our stacks. And the first couple of stitches until you get this pulled, you are going to see your thread. That's why it's important to use a thread that kind of blends a little bit. But once you get this stack started spiraling, you're not going to see that thread. Very minimal, I should say. So 2 B's, I'm going to go down through 3. So that's going to be my whole second stack of B's. Up 1. So I'm coming through that very top stack. Okay, now 2 C's. I'm going to come down through 3. But now this is where it's going to change up a little bit. When you get to the tail thread, you'll know this is where you do your step up. Normally my up one would be this bead right here, because this is my bead that would have been the top of the stack before we added our sets of 2. So the only time our down 3 up 1 will change is when we come to our step up, which is always going to be this stack where your little tail's at. So that's the great thing, you'll always know right there. But when we go down 3 on our stack of A's, we're going to go up through 2, because our up 1 will be this one, and then our step up will be the one we added for this round. So we'll go through this again, so don't worry. And again, pull it tight. Okay, so I'm going to pick up 2 A's. I'm going down through 3, so this time I'm not going all the way down through the stack. I'm going through just my top 3. And it can be a little hard to get through in the beginning until you get your stack started, especially if you're a tight beater. So down 3, up 1. So I'm coming up through the top bead of my B stack. Okay, now 2 B's, down 3, up 1, which is going to be the top of my C stack. Pick up 2 C's, down 3. Now this is where we're back to our step up, because I'm back to my tail thread. So this time it's down 3, up 2. So it's my 1 bead and then my step up, which is the bead that I added on this row. Okay, I'm gonna do this a couple more times for you. You can already see my stack start to go from straight to start leaning a little bit. So pick up 2, down 3, up 1. Okay, and again, you can start to see this brown stack going from straight to curved. Pick up 2, down 3, up 1, pick up 2 C's, down 3, I'm not used to working with 8s when doing these spirals, so it can be a little frustrating, especially if you're a tight beater, till you get those curves started. Okay, so down 3, and now remember, I'm back to my little step up here because here's my tail, so here's where we have to go up 2. So we're going up through the last bead on our row and then the first bead that we added. So you're going to continue, and as you continue, you can see now they're not in perfect little stacks. They're making almost a triangle, and that's what you want them to do, because what's going to happen is as you work, you're going to start to see those stacks spiral like it is here. Now you can see this is the beginning of where I started on my strip with the 11s, and you can see there that you don't see any of the thread, and it blends really well as you work. And this is really important because you will, you know, if you use a totally different color thread, you are going to see a little bit of the thread there. If you use something that goes together, you're going to get more of a stack like this. So this will allow you too to kind of see the size difference between your 11s, what the 11s would look like, and a stack of 8s. So you're going to continue doing this down 3, up 1, down 3, up 1, down 3, up 2, until you get to where you're finishing with your thread. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my needle back on my working thread here so I can show you how to add thread and get rid of thread as you work on your spiral. So I did my strip as much as I could with the thread that I had, and now I have done my step up and left my tail thread where my step up is. The green color here was my A, the rainbow topaz was my B, and then this yellow was my C. So like I said, I did the step up. I left my thread where it was. I do that because I want to make sure that I remember where I was at. I don't get rid of this thread yet because I want to know exactly where that thread was coming out. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come down actually about 6 to 8 rows, and I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to come straight through the stack of beads that I'm currently coming out of. And I'm going to pull this on through. Now I want to pull this through, and I'm going to leave about 6 to 8 inches of tail thread. Now I'm going to put a needle onto that tail thread. Now I'm going to hold my working thread and my little working tail in my fingers here. Just going to kind of wrap them around. You can put a stop bead on them if you want to. I just find it just as easy to hold it. But now I'm going to work this short tail thread that I have on the end of my new working thread, and I'm just going to start working that thread in. So like I'm coming out of an A, so I'm going to come through an adjacent C, and I might come up through one of those beads in that stack. I might come up through 2 of those, but then I'm just going to come through the adjacent stack of A's that I was just coming out of. This is going to kind of help lock these beads in place and lock that thread in place right there. Okay, then I might stitch down a few more rows. Okay, this time instead of locking with my C's, I might lock with my other stack of A's. So I would come through the little A adjacent to where my thread is, and mine are tight, so just be aware of that. So this time I might come up through 3 beads. It really doesn't matter how many you're coming through, as long as you are working in a good bit of this tail thread and we're really stitching it through and locking it in. Okay, so this time I'm going to come down, and you can see that you don't see that thread. It blends in really well. So again, I can take and I can come up through, just make sure it's adjacent beads that are right next to each other in your spiral and in your stacks. So this time I might work over here to where I'm all the way up to my C's. Until you keep working this thread and you don't feel any pull in that thread, I keep stitching through and getting rid of it. You can definitely tie the thread off. That's not a problem, but I hate to put knots in a piece like this because if you're not careful, haha, no pun intended, you're not careful, you will see the knots. And I feel like if you're working on a piece like this and you're putting all this time and effort into it, I don't want it ruined by seeing knots. So my thread is secure. And you can see I've gone down about an inch here. I've worked it through. So now you can use your thread burner or your cutters and cut it very, very close. And then basically I'm going to take my little short tail now, a little short working thread, and I'm going to do the same thing with this tail. I'm not going to tie it off. I'm just going to simply work it back through and then continue with my spiral. Alright, so I went ahead and I finished the length of the necklace that I wanted, and Heather went ahead and made my loop big enough so that we could attach it to the necklace. So at this point, this end that we started with is nice and pulled together. But if you'll look at this end here, and I'm going to zoom in here, give it just a minute. If you'll look and see, you can still see where it's actually separated here from where we've been doing our spirals. So we need to actually go ahead and fix this. And I've got ahead of myself here, so let me back out one little set here. Okay, so what we need to do at this point is we need to go through, like we're going to do another row, but not add any beads. We're just going to connect everything together. So I'm going to go down through my A's, 3 of them, and then up through my top B. So down 3, up 1. Pull that tight. Go down through 3 B's, up through 1 C. down, and the only thing we're going to do different now is we're going to go down through 3 C's and up through the top A. So this is going to pull everything together. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to reinforce this connection just to make sure everything is pulled together good. And then I'm going to tie it off. So you can either stitch your thread through like I did in the beginning, or you can tie the thread off, completely up to you. Because what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to use the glue-on end caps. These end caps are a 10 by 17 millimeter, and they fit this perfectly. So you can actually use a E6000 glue, a GS Hypo Cement, whatever you want to glue this on. Now, if you don't want to do a glue end cap like I've done here, you can look at the directions, which can be found in my herringbone book, and I show exactly how to do the beaded end like is on the sample that I showed today. So I'm going to leave this on the screen for just a minute so you can screenshot it, pause it, look at it, whatever you want to do. But otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and do my glue-on pieces and then show you the finished project. So guys, here is the finished piece. And for my part of the video, for a limited time, my herringbone book is going to be on special through the end of February 2019. It's going to be half price. So if you want the printed copy of the pattern, this is going to be 10 bucks the whole month of February 2019. And this will come in really handy because my next video is going to show you how to make this beautiful pendant that's on the front of the book. So let's finish up with Heather and we'll say goodbye. Okay guys, thank you so much for hanging in there and with me and Heather today and watching our brand new collaboration video. Now Heather's shells are going to be on sale for a limited time, so I'm going to let Heather tell you all about that.
My handmade glass shells are all one of a kind, and I will have them on sale until March 31st, 2019 for $29. They usually sell for $39, and I'm also offering kits with coordinating beads for $39. So I will honor that until March 31st. Each bead is made by me in my glass studio, so no one is going to be alike. If for any reason I sell out, I would be happy to make a custom glass shell to coordinate with your bead colors or a kit that coordinates with it. And you can reach me via Facebook is going to be the best way, and you'll see all pictures of my past work too.
Yep, and we'll also put a link right below us here for Heather's Facebook page and just general information to her store. So if you're ever in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, be sure to come down to Surfside and see Heather at Beach Beads. Again, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.